They said there was a man in number 14 Adaeze Street who could sit from sunrise to sunset without lifting a finger. Not to sweep. Not to fetch water. Not even to lift his own plate after eating. His name was Kunle, but in the mouths of neighbors he was chairman. Not because he owned anything but because of the way he sat in that faded plastic chair in front of his one-room apartment like a king without a kingdom. The compound itself was a busy, noisy Lagos maze. Tin roofs sweating under the sun, women frying akra at the gate in the mornings, children chasing torn kites in the dust. Water drums lined the narrow corridor, and the air carried the scent of kerosene, pepper, and gossip. But at the far corner, near the patch where weeds fought for life, Kunle's chair sat. And in it Kunle. Always Kunle. From morning till night he was there. Elbow resting on the arm of the chair, legs spread like he owned the street. A battered radio on the windowsill played Fuji music, and sometimes between songs he would scratch his belly lazily, adjust his singlet and call to one of the children passing, "Oya, buy me pure water." Not a please. Not a thank you. Just that slow drawl, like the world owed him its labor. In the early days, new tenants would glance at him and assume he was resting from night duty or recovering from an illness. But after weeks passed, after they saw his wife, slim, bright-eyed Adaeze, hurrying to the market before sunrise, returning with heavy bags, cooking, washing, paying bills, while Kunle's chair never emptied, the truth would settle. Chairman didn't work. It wasn't that jobs were scarce, though they were. The problem was that Kunle didn't look for one. Neighbors said he hadn't worked in over 3 years. The last thing anyone remembered was him selling phone accessories in a kiosk near the main road. One day the kiosk closed and that was the end. Now he survived on Adaeze's sweat. Every afternoon, the compound's women would gather at Mama Bola's shade to shell groundnuts and exchange the day's news. Adaeze's name floated there often. "That girl is wasting herself," Mama Bola would say, shaking her head. "See, fine woman, see how she's suffering under that man." "But she knew him before she married him," another would add. "Na love day blind her." "Love? I beg," someone else would snort. "Even goat go tire if you tie him too long without food." The men in the compound didn't say much openly, but some would nod at Kunle with a mixture of pity and disgust. Others laughed with him, sharing sachets of gin in the evenings. He liked to talk politics, liked to boast about how he would one day make it big, but no one had ever seen him take a step in that direction. Adaeze, for her part, moved with quiet efficiency. She never argued in public. Never raised her voice at Kunle. Even when his voice rose at her, the most she'd do was pause, swallow, and continue her task. This only fueled the gossip, because silence in Lagos is suspicious. The truth was, no one knew what had happened to Kunle. Some swore he used to be ambitious. Others claimed a friend cheated him and he lost hope. But stories like that were just seasoning for idle mouths. What everyone agreed on was that Adaeze deserved better. One hot Wednesday afternoon, a small scene unfolded that the compound would replay for weeks. Adaeze returned from the market, sweating, balancing a basket of yams and a bag of tomatoes. She had barely reached their door when Kunle called from his chair. "Ah, you didn't buy me malt?" "I didn't have enough," she began. "Then why didn't you leave something behind and get it later? You know I don't like eating without malt." She smiled faintly, trying to slip inside, but Kunle stood, blocking her. "Is it that you no longer hear me? Or you're now forming busy woman?" The exchange drew eyes from every doorway. Even children paused their game. Adaeze's cheeks flushed, but she only shifted the basket to her other arm and murmured, "I'll buy it later." Kunle shook his head in mock disbelief, clicked his tongue loudly and returned to his chair. "Women of nowadays," he muttered, loud enough for the whole compound to hear. "Small money in hand, they think they are men." That evening at Mama Bola's shade, the story had already mutated into 10 versions. In one, Kunle slapped her. In another, Adaeze had shouted back. By nightfall, people were checking the corridor to see if they would hear another quarrel. But none came. Just the same silence from Adaeze, the same chair from Kunle. And the whispers thickened. They didn't know it yet, but Adaeze's silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. She had her own reason for staying. And the day that reason revealed itself, number 14 Adaeze Street would never be the same again. Adaeze's mornings started before the rooster's first cry. Long before the compound stirred, she was already awake, wrapping her head tie in the dim light, moving with the precision of someone who had learned to measure time in seconds, not hours. She boiled water on the kerosene stove, set beans to cook for moi orders, and swept the narrow corridor outside their room while Kunle slept inside, snoring softly, one leg dangling off the bed. From the outside she looked like any other hard-working Lagos wife. A woman with no choice but to hustle because her husband could not or would not. But inside her heart burned a private fire, one that no neighbor gossip could touch. It wasn't because she loved Kunle too much to leave him. In truth, there were nights she lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, wondering what her life might have been without him. But there was a promise she had made long ago, one she intended to keep. That promise was the quiet chain that kept her anchored in this one room, in this compound, in this marriage that outsiders pitied. Adaeze had once told her closest friend Ijeoma about it. It was during a rare Saturday outing when they sat under the almond tree at Ijeoma's compound, sharing a bottle of malt. "You're stronger than me," Ijeoma had said, shaking her head. "If na me, I for don run since." Adaeze smiled without humor. "I can't. I owe him. Owe him. That man that sits in chair from morning till night." Adaeze's voice had dropped, almost to a whisper. "Before all this, before the laziness, before the shame, he saved my life." But she didn't elaborate. He never did. Ijeoma only sighed, squeezing her friend's hand, but in her heart, she wished Adaeze would stop paying whatever invisible debt kept her there. The contrast between them was like night and day. Kunle had once been the kind of man who filled a room with laughter. At least that's what Adaeze remembered. He used to wear crisp shirts, ironed to perfection, and always had one business plan or the other. But something had shifted after the collapse of his kiosk. The fight drained out of him, replaced by excuses and idle talk. When neighbors tried to warn Adaeze, they thought they were helping. "Don't kill yourself for a man who won't lift finger," Mama Bola would tell her when she came to buy groundnuts. "This one, he's only dragging you down," another woman would say. "Before you know it, your beauty will waste." Even the landlord's wife, Madame Chinyer, once pulled her aside. "You're young, Adaeze. A woman's best years are not many. Don't spend all of them carrying dead weight." Adaeze only nodded, never agreeing, never arguing. Because how could she explain that sometimes love wasn't about what was happening now, but about something that had happened long before? Kunle, for his part, was oblivious to the whispers, or maybe he simply didn't care. He carried himself with the air of a man misunderstood by the world. One rainy afternoon he sat in his chair, a wrapper tied around his waist, chatting with two other jobless men from the next street. "You see, the problem in this country is not laziness," he declared, gesturing with his half-empty sachet of gin. "It's opportunity. If opportunity knocks, even I will surprise you." One of the men chuckled. "Opportunity no go knock if you never build door." They all laughed, except Kunle, who looked mildly offended. Adaeze passed them on her way in, carrying a tray of freshly fried puff-puff she was delivering to a shop down the road. She greeted them politely, her tone warm but her eyes unreadable. Later that evening, when she returned, the compound's younger women were gathered in one corner, whispering about her again. "She's too fine for him," one of them said. "Na pity tie her there," another replied. Adaeze heard, but she kept walking. They only knew. Her reason for staying wasn't something she intended to share with people who saw only the surface. And though the weight of Kunle's idleness pressed on her, she bore it with a strange patience. Because deep down she knew the day was coming when her own hands would shift the balance. When she would do something no one, not even Kunle, could have imagined. And when that day came, Adaeze Street would not be ready for the storm she carried in her quiet smile. The first disgrace came on a Sunday afternoon. The compound children had just finished their noisy game of Sue in the corridor, chalk lines still glowing white on the reddish concrete. Women balanced pots from the backyard tap. Radios argued across windows, gospel on one side, football analysis on the other. A fine breeze carried the smell of fried plantain from Madame Sada's canteen by the junction. Adaeze came back from church in a neat blue wrapper, Bible tucked under her arm, 2 loaves of Adaeze bread in a black nylon. Her head tie was simple, her face makeup-free. She greeted everyone as she passed. "Good afternoon, Mama Anu. Good afternoon, Okachukwu. How market?" Kunle was in the chair. He had not gone to church. He said Sunday was for strategic thinking. He sat with his radio, tapping one foot to a Fuji rhythm, a toothpick dancing in the corner of his mouth. When he saw her, he scratched his cheek with the toothpick like a king beckoning a servant. Welcome, he said, not smiling. Where is my Sunday malt? Adaeze showed him the nylon. Bread and stew. I cooked before I left. Malt. His voice rose half a step. I didn't have extra. I'll get Zobo for you. Cold one. Kunle stood. The chair squeaked, relieved of duty. He took the nylon, peeped inside like a customs officer. No malt? On a Sunday? After all this, your holiness. He threw the nylon at her feet. The bread rolled into the dust. Loaves breathed out crumbs like surrender. The corridor hushed. A child giggled, then went quiet when his mother pinched him. Adaeze bent, picked the bread, dusted it gently. Her eyes shone but did not spill. She lifted her face. Kunle, she said softly, let me warm the stew. He'll eat. I'll buy malt later. Kunle turned to their audience. You people should advise this my wife. Since small money entered her hand, she does as she likes. Disrespects husband. Tomorrow now she will say I am the problem in this marriage. Chairman, take him easy, the landlord's brother, Uncle Ibuka, said, palms up. Food day. Eat first. Kunle scoffed, dropped back into the chair with a thud that sent pity flying like dust motes. He put the radio louder. Adaeze went inside. 5 minutes later she returned with a tray. 2 plates, stew gleaming red like apology, bread sliced, a cup of water sweating with ice. She set it on a stool beside him. He didn't look. He stepped back. Let me know if you need pepper. He ignored her. Ate later alone. By evening, versions traveled the compound like Okada. She had knelt and begged. He had pushed her. She had cried on the landlord's doorstep. In truth, she had done none of those. She cleaned. She portioned moi into leaves. And at night, she whispered one dry sentence into the ceiling. Lord, give me 10 more days of patience. The second disgrace wore the face of sabotage. Adaeze's small business had started to stumble into the light. She supplied puff puff and moi to 3 places now. Chop Belful Canteen, Glory Provision Store, and a planning office at Ojulegba where the staff swore her bean cakes brought sense to their Monday meetings. She had saved to buy a small second-hand mixer and a blue cooler. She guarded them like children. One Tuesday at dawn she prepared batter, sweet and smooth, ready for frying. The quill warmed. She stepped into the corridor to borrow matches from Blessing in room 12. When she returned, the kerosene stove hissed a confused, dying sound. Oil chilled back to sulking. The walls smelled of water. The kerosene tank was open. A film of liquid clung to the floor like a spill that didn't know where to go. Kunle stood by the window with a shrug that looked practiced. I thought you were done. I needed to dilute the kerosene for my lamp. The thing was too strong. Dilute kerosene? Adaeze echoed. With water. It's all liquid now. Don't raise voice for me this morning. He didn't. She set the stove aside. Clean the mess. Went to knock on Mama Sada's door, eyes steady. Auntie, please, can I use your gas? I'll pay later. She carried the batter across the compound, women sucking their teeth in sympathy. By 9 she delivered to 2 locations instead of 3. Glory Provision Store refused watery puff puff. An apology. A promise. A lost morning. At noon the chorus began at Mama Bola's shade. Me, I've said it. Beezy, the hairdresser, flipped her braid like punctuation. That man is her enemy. Enemy inside the house is worse than enemy at the gate, Mama Bola decreed, cracking groundnuts with a tooth that feared nothing. I hear he took 10,000 from her last week, Joy added. Say he wants to buy business line. As if line will call money by itself. Shoo, someone warned. She's coming. Adaeze walked by with her cooler. She smiled at them. Good afternoon. She went to the tap, filled 2 buckets slowly. Her jaw clenched once. Twice. She didn't speak of kerosene. The third disgrace was the ugliest. False accusation. It arrived like harmattan dust. Sudden, stinging everywhere at once. On a Friday evening, men gathered in front of the compound to drink. Salary day. Laughter bounced. A small speaker coughed Afrobeats. Mr. Kalu, who owned the spare parts shop where Adaeze supplied snacks once a week, came to see the landlord about leaking pipes. He met Adaeze at the corridor, handed her a folded brown envelope. Madam Ada, he said. That's the balance for last week. I was not around. She nodded. Thank you, sir. He smiled politely, stepped aside. Kunle saw an envelope pass from a man's hand to his wife's. He blinked, then stood. "What is that?" he asked, blocking her. "Payment," she said. "For Puff Puff." Kunle laughed, bitter like burnt sugar. "Puff Puff is now paying in envelope? It's cash. Or love letter?" "Kunle," she warned softly. His voice rose to reach the men. "So this is what you people advised her to do. Since I don't have work, she has found her own work. Sugar mummy for spare parts man." "Ah, Chairman," someone tried. "Calm down." Kunle snatched the envelope, tore it open, flung the notes into the air. Money sprayed the corridor like frantic birds. Children squealed, bent. Mothers screamed their names back. Adaeze didn't move. She watched the notes flutter down on bare feet, on cracked tiles, on Kunle's chest as a stray 50 naira note stuck like accusation. "Collect your love back," he shouted at Mr. Kalu. "Collect it." Mr. Kalu raised his hands. "Chairman, I beg. This is business. Ask your wife." Adaeze finally spoke, voice low. "Kunle, stop." "Or what? People are watching." "Good." He spread his arms, a prophet without wisdom. "Let them see what I married." The landlord's wife pushed forward. "Enough." Her wrapper swished battle. "Adaeze, go inside. Kunle, come to the parlor. Now." They sat like naughty children under a teacher's glare. The landlord, Chief Nana, wore glasses that made him look twice as disappointed. "Kunle," he said, voice even, "you will apologize to your wife and to that man." "For what?" "For scattering money that is not yours. For talking nonsense." Kunle's throat tightened. Pride perched there, claws sunk deep. He swallowed. "I will not." The chief removed his glasses. The room cooled 2 degrees. "Then you will pack out at month's end." Silence fell hard. Adaeze lifted her gaze. "Sir, please. Don't beg for him," the chief's wife said. "He is not a child." Adaeze clasped her hands. "It was money for my business. I forgive him." The chief's wife wheeled to her. "And tomorrow? He will accuse you of what next?" "This one is blindness." Adaeze bowed her head. "I take responsibility. We will replace what fell." "Madam," the chief softened. "I know you. You are a good tenant. But you cannot bring market fights into our corridor. Control your home." "I will, sir." They ended the meeting with a warning. The landlord deferred the eviction. "Last chance," he said. "No more drama." Outside, the night swallowed whispers, then spat them back. By morning, the compound had a new song. "Spare parts, sweetheart," someone muttered when Adaeze passed. "Envelope wife," another added, stifling a laugh. The children chanted a nonsense rhyme about flying money until a slap silenced one and fear silenced the rest. Adaeze moved through all of it with a stillness that was not weakness. Every insult was a nail. She was building a canoe with them. In the canteen on Monday, staff gossip boiled like stew. Joy leaned over the counter. "If Nami, I go leave am. That kind man go kill person before he changes." Beezy nodded, eyes wide. "Me, I think he is possessed by village people." "Village people are tired," Mama Saad said, tasting soup. "What we have here is pride and fear." "Fear?" Joy asked. "Men fear shame more than hunger," Mama Saad replied, tapping the spoon. "When they think they have failed, they pretend they don't care. It is performance. But inside it burns." Adaeze stacked bowls, quiet. She knew the truth of that sentence better than anyone. She had seen the burn once before the chair swallowed him. That night, after the false accusation, the compound slept restlessly. Dogs barked at nothing. A generator coughed in room 3, died, resurrected like a stubborn preacher. The moon hung thin and sharp above the mango tree like a cutlass watching everything. Adaeze finished washing plates in the corridor, water glittering around her feet. She wrung the rag, hung it on the nail. She turned to the door. Kunle stood in the doorway, a shadow made of regret and gin. He leaned his shoulder on the frame as if begging it to hold a weakness he could not admit to the ground. For a long moment they simply stared. The corridor hummed softly with night insects. Somewhere, distant, a late danfo squealed its tired brakes. Kunle cleared his throat. The sound broke like chalk. He didn't speak. Adaeze moved past him into the room. The air inside was warm, smelling of pepper and old soap. She set the lantern low. Sat on the edge of the bed. He stepped in. Close the door. The latch clicked like a line being drawn. He stood there, head bowed. Then, in a voice that surprised even him, he asked a question that fell between them like a sacrament and a wound. Why do you stay? You in the next story. For a heartbeat, Adaeze said nothing. The room felt smaller, the air heavy with things unsaid. The lantern light threw Kunle's shadow long against the wall, a giant in shape but bent at the shoulders. His voice still hung in the space between them, brittle and raw. Why do you stay? She studied his face, the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his jaw was clenched like he was bracing for a blow. It wasn't the face of the proud chairman who held court in the compound. This was someone else. Someone she had glimpsed only once or twice in the last few years. Her hands rested in her lap. You want the truth? She asked quietly. He gave a short nod. Adaeze took a slow breath, her voice steady but soft. Because before all this, before the chair, before the shouting, before the world started looking at you like you were nothing, you saved me. Kunle's brow furrowed. Saved you? Yes. She looked down as if the memory was a fragile thing she was afraid to break. Do you remember that day at Unthinkable bus stop? The man with the blue shirt. It took him a moment, but then something shifted in his expression. The one that... Yes. Her voice was almost a whisper. The one who tried to drag me into that side street. You didn't know me. I was just another girl in the crowd. But you came. You fought him off. You took a cut on your arm because of me. She looked up at him now, her eyes clear. That was the day my life could have ended. And you gave me another one. Kunle blinked. His hand instinctively touched the faint scar just above his elbow. That was years ago. And I made a promise that day, she continued, that if you ever needed someone to stand for you the way you stood for me, I would. Even if it was hard. Even if it was ugly. He swallowed, his throat moving slowly. And you think this is me, needing you? Adaeze tilted her head. I think this is you lost. And I think you've been too ashamed to say it. The words landed heavy. Kunle looked away, his eyes fixed on the floor. You don't know what it's like, he murmured. To wake up every day and feel useless. To see your wife working herself to the bone while you... He broke off, shaking his head. I didn't plan this, Adaeze. I just stopped trying. And after a while, it felt easier to pretend I didn't care than to admit I couldn't fix it. The admission seemed to cost him something. His shoulders slumped, and the proud mask he wore in public slipped completely. Adaze's voice was gentle now. Then why not say so? Why not let me carry you for a while until you find your feet again? His laugh was humorless. Because in this country, a man without money is not a man. I thought if I stayed in control of something, anything, even if it was just the chair, people wouldn't see me as a failure. But they do, she said simply. And it's not because you have no job. It's because you've stopped trying to stand up from the chair. Silence followed, but it wasn't the brittle kind. It was the kind that left space for something new to take root. Kunle finally looked at her, really looked at her. You've carried me long enough, Adaeze. I don't know how to thank you. Start by standing, she said, her lips curving faintly. Tomorrow morning just stand. That's all. He nodded slowly, the smallest flicker of resolve passing through his eyes. As the night deepened, they didn't speak much more. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and she lay beside him, both of them caught in thoughts that stretched far beyond the four corners of the room. Outside, the compound hummed with the low sounds of Lagos night, distant music, the occasional call of a hawker still walking the streets, a motorbike buzzing like an insect through the darkness. And somewhere in that quiet, the air shifted. Not enough for anyone outside to notice, but enough for Adaeze to feel it in her bones. Something in Kunle had cracked. Not in defeat, but in the way a shell cracks when something inside is ready to emerge. He didn't say it, but the question he had asked, "Why do you stay?" was the first thing he'd said to her in a long time that had nothing to do with demands or complaints. And though Adaeze didn't know it yet, that small crack was where the light would start to enter. The next morning, before the sun stretched its full hand over Adaeze Street, Kunle did something no one in the compound had seen in years. He stood. Not from hunger, not to chase a child on an errand, not to stretch his legs before returning to the chair, but to follow Adaeze out of the room as she prepared for the day. His singlet was clean, his hair combed back, and though his eyes still carried the heaviness of the past years, there was a glint there, small but alive. Adaeze glanced at him but said nothing. She simply handed him a bucket. Tap is still running. Before it stops. To her quiet satisfaction he took it. By the time the compound fully woke, gossip was already bubbling. Women shelling melon seeds in the corridor nudged each other when they saw him walk past to fetch water. Uncle Ibuka nearly dropped his cup of Gary. Chairman. Carrying bucket? He muttered, shaking his head like he had seen an eclipse. It wasn't much. But it was something. Over the next week, the shifts were small but visible. Kunle swept the front of their door before Adaeze returned from morning deliveries. He carried her cooler halfway to Chop Belful Canteen on Thursday. And though he still sat in the chair, he began to leave it. Once to fix the leaking tap in the backyard, another time to help the landlord's wife carry bags from the market. The compound noticed. Adaeze has put pepper in his soup, Mama Bola whispered. No, oh, Madame Chinyere countered. She has put sense in his head. Then came the act no one saw coming. It was a Friday evening, a month after the envelope fight. A sudden downpour caught the compound off guard. Clothes on the line flapped helplessly, buckets overflowed, and the gutters filled fast. Adaeze was still out delivering snacks when the rain began. Her moi stand outside the junction shop was uncovered, at the mercy of the storm. Kunle saw it from where he sat. The old Kunle would have shrugged, blaming fate or rain. But this time he rose, grabbed the largest umbrella in the room and ran, into the storm. When Adaeze reached the stand, breathless from hurrying in the rain, she found Kunle there, soaked to the skin, one arm shielding the trays with the umbrella, the other shoving the whole table under a nearby shed. His hair clung to his forehead, water running down his face. You'll catch cold, she said, trying to mask the shock in her voice. You'll lose your goods, he replied simply, not looking at her. The next day the compound was buzzing. Chairman ran in the rain for his wife. Blessing from room 12 announced like a town crier. They say he even covered her food with his own body, another added. This one is love revival. From then on the small changes began to snowball. Kunle started helping her knead dough in the mornings. He took over deliveries to the planning office at Ojelegbo once a week. And though his chair remained at the corner, it was often empty now. One evening, as the sky bled gold over Adaeze Street, Adaeze sat beside him on the wooden bench instead of the chair. Children played 10-10 in the corridor. Neighbors greeted them with something new in their voices. Not pity but warmth. Kunle turned to her. You've been patient with me. She smiled faintly. You're worth it. His jaw tightened slightly. I'll make it up to you. You already have, she said and meant it. The compound didn't become quiet overnight. Lagos compounds never do. But the tone changed. The insults dried up. Gossip shifted to other tenants. And every so often, someone would catch Kunle smiling to himself as he carried a cooler or fixed a hinge, as if rediscovering a part of himself he had buried under years of pride and shame. One late afternoon, as the harmattan wind dusted the sky, Kunle stood in the corridor watching Adaeze hang laundry. The sun lit her wrapper, turning its blue to fire. He thought of the day at Onipanu, of the scar on his arm, of the nights she could have left but didn't. He didn't say it out loud, but the truth was there in his eyes. She had saved him twice. And as the evening melted into night, Adaeze Street felt different. Not because the walls had changed or the noise had softened, but because something inside their small corner had healed. Like a chair finally emptying so its owner could stand again. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, subscribe and share it with your friends. Someone out there might need to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your time and support. See you in the next story.